After having an absolutely historic 2021 to probably one of the worst 2022s that we could have possibly imagined, Ada Cardano may be in position to finally recapture some of the growth that we saw a few years ago and start to get its name back. And so in today's video, I want to give you guys an update on what's going on with Ada and exactly why I believe it could be in a great position to see some growth from this point forward. So let's not waste any more time at all and let's get straight into today's video. So let's just start off with the basics here. Whenever we look at Ada Cardano, first and foremost, we can see what has happened over the last year, and that was absolute utter destruction. The price obviously came down from up to $3 all the way down to about 23 to 24 cents, leaving many people to exit Ada and kind of just forget about it because it did just do so poorly throughout this bear market. But what we can see is that at this given point over the last about 4 to 5 weeks, it actually has made some progress and could be in a position to see this tide that we have been seeing start to shift into a more neutral or even positive direction. Now the question then becomes, how do we figure that out? Like, how do we tell that the tide is shifting and that this could be a decent time to start accumulating on some Ada Cardano? Well, let me break that down for you. Whenever we're in a descending structure of this nature, where we're literally just channeling downwards, you're going to typically see a breakout above that point of resistance. Unless this thing is literally just going straight to zero, it is going to usually see a breakout above resistance. And so the question becomes, is that the point in time where we say, okay, now it's broken resistance, now it goes up? Well, no, not so much just yet. See, the issue is that whenever you see a breaking of resistance from a descending structure, there are things called fake outs. And what fake outs are is whenever you see a breakout above that point of resistance, but then you can't hold it as support and re-enter back into that descending structure as a fake out. This faked them out, and anyone who went long right here, they got faked out, and now they're going to get liquidated as the price does re-enter back below this point of resistance. And so what we want to pay attention to is, okay, sure, this is fantastic that we did get above this point of resistance, but the question is then becomes, do we stay above it, and how do we mitigate the risk of this being some type of fake out? Well, there's two ways that I pay attention to if this is going to be a fake out or not. The first one starts on the short-term time frames. On the shorter time frames, I always look to see if we can successfully backtest and hold that previous point of resistance as support. So in this example, what I would be looking for is if at any given point we come back down and start rolling, which I do believe we will do soon, are we capable of holding this previous point of resistance as support or holding a recent low, something like this, above that point of support? So say we come back down to say 32 cents and then we're capable of holding it in continuation. That is a back testing, and that is an establishment of support that does confirm to me, okay, we're in fantastic position to see some growth over the long term, and we're likely not going to see some type of fake out to the upside that leads to a break back into this descending structure. Now the next thing is going to be on the more mid to long term time frames, and that is going to be if we're capable of setting a regional high. Now a regional high is whenever you just look at your charts here, okay, what you can see is that there are these macro highs that stand out, these regional highs, and I'm just going to circle all of them. These are regional highs. Every time we got a bounce on, say, the weekly charts and we put a weekly top in, that is a regional high. And what you can see is that our most recent regional high is at 44/45 cents. Usually speaking, if we're capable of seeing a new regional high set, we are likely out of a position in which we are going to see a fake out or some type of strong crash all the way back down below that point of resistance. It usually just does not happen. A fake out usually happens if we're incapable of setting a new macro high or high. We set a lower high and then we continue back down for the lower low. That's usually how that happens. And so what I look for is, okay, we got a successful back test on the short terms. Are we now capable of breaking the most recent regional high? And if that is the case, then we are in fantastic position to really see some growth over the long term. So what you need to be paying attention to for Ada Cardano is the interaction that we will eventually have at 45 cents. You see, what's beautiful is that right now we are either going to complete step 1 or we're going to complete step 2. What I mean by that is if we do see the price start to roll from here, which I'm going to talk about in a second, we are in a position in which we can come back to back test the higher low and complete step number 1. But if that doesn't happen, and if we do continue here, we are in position to come retest this 44.45 cent level and complete step number 2. So it does seem as if we are in position to try to complete one of those steps, and I do believe that it will happen rather soon. Now, the reason why I'd call this one step number 1, the back test, is because of what we are seeing on the shorter term time frames. What you can see on the short term time frames is an ascending structure. Now, just like I said, descending structures usually break upwards, ascending structures usually break downwards. Typically speaking, when we get a bounce and a move of this nature, we will see it break to the downside. That's just usually what happens. And what happens is that as we do get a break to the downside of ascending structure, we will typically come back and establish support on one of those points in which we did look to bounce off the bottom side of the structure. So you see we bounced off of this level, and this level. Well, those become our breakdown targets to the downside. And so considering the fact that all three of our breakdown targets at this point rest above this previous point of resistance, I do believe we are in a fantastic position that even if we do start to pull to the downside towards the low 30s, that we will hold support at one of these levels and look to put in the higher low above this previous point of resistance and cancel out the belief that a fake out is happening here for ADA Cardano. So to me, it seems like it is destiny for ADA Cardano to complete step number one, which then realistically leaves breaking 44 to 45 cents as step number two for a full confirmation that the tides are shifting for ADA Cardano over the long term. And so I'm paying extremely close attention to these levels, and I'm going to lay them out for you. If we get a break to the downside, I'm looking at 36.8 or 36.8. I'm looking at 34.7, and then last but not least, I'm sitting here looking at 32.5. Those are your three breakdown targets and the three levels that we are the most likely to bounce off of. And one of those, if they're capable of breaking and bouncing back above 45 cents, puts us in position to complete step number one and step number two. And now we're in great position for ADA Cardano to see a macro move to the upside. Now that does also open up doors of opportunity to say some type of inverse head and shoulders is playing out, but I'm more worried. I'll worry about that later. Right now, I'm more worried about, are we capable of backtesting, holding, and then breaking above 45 cents in the long term? Now, yes, I am saying that in the short term, this thing can go up and it can go down. That's because my goal in this channel is not to be right. My goal is to prepare you for any outcome possible. And so as long as you are aware that as long as we hold support on one of these levels or break 45 cents next, we are in a fantastic position to see some growth, then you'll understand why I'm saying that I am actually starting to accumulate a little bit more on ADA Cardano, especially within my dollar cost averaging strategy. I think that as we look at this in the long term, you can see that overall we are starting to see this tide shift. You look at something like the weekly RSI, we got a full extension all the way down to that oversold territory. I don't like to call it necessarily oversold because it definitely can be sold even more, but it is a good representation of when we are reaching some type of macro bottom, and you can see that little tide starting to shift. You can look at something like the Bollinger Bands, the weekly Bollinger Bands. We captured this 20 simple moving average for the very first time since our all-time high back here, and all of these things just tell me we're in great position to see some growth, especially if we can backtest and hold as support. And so with that said, I am, like, again, starting to accumulate a little bit more of my ADA Cardano, and in the short term, I am just simply watching to see how these interactions play out because they can be super telling of what the future is going to hold for ADA's price as a whole. Now, before we do go ahead and wrap up today's video, I wanted to tell you guys about something that I thought was actually pretty interesting. You guys know that I do a lot of work with Cookie Sale. I'm an ambassador for them. I just believe in the project as a whole, and so I pay a lot of close attention to all of the top launch pads and all of these things because, of course, that is the space in which we work in. Now, I do pay a lot of attention to DAOmaker. Of course, if you look at CoinGecko, they're the #1 market cap launch pad right now, and so of course I pay attention to them. And now, because of that, I actually take notice of what their owner does, who is Chris Zagnan, and he has something that's relatively interesting. I do believe it could be something of a little lottery ticket, and I wanted to tell you all about it because personally I am going to try to put a little bit of money in just to kind of see what happens, okay? So as you can see here, what they're going to be doing is trying to rebuild what Logan Paul failed to do, and that was Crypto Zoo. Now, they're calling it Degen Zoo, and their whole goal here is to say, hey, what he tried to do was basically BS. We definitely can do this, and we believe we can do this in less than 30 days with less than $20,000. Of course, Logan Paul said that it was taking them over a year and over $1 million to make it, and Chris is confident that with their tools and resources that they can make it in 30 to 45 days and for less than $20,000 of a budget. And so what they're doing is they're literally trying to rebuild it, and they're actually making a lot of progress. They're on day 31 right now, and they are seeing a lot of growth on the Twitter for Degen Zoo at this given point. They are currently sitting right around 40,000 followers, and that is because they are actually making progress and almost done with this thing. They do have the full test net up at this given point, and so they are running some of those final tests and some of those final patches just to see what all they are going to need to fix. But they have updated everyone every single day on each one of the small things from Crypto Zoo that failed and how they were capable of fixing it. And so because of that, they are, kind of catching a lot of momentum, and people are saying, damn, like they can really do what Logan Paul failed to do, and of course notoriously kind of scammed his followers about. And so with that said, I thought it was interesting. It's kind of a little lottery ticket for me. I am going to throw a little bit of money into it just to see what happens. Of course, we're not in a market right now where we should be putting a lot of money into micro caps, but I do think, small little bits of BNB and into each one of these things could have a pretty strong reward. And so I thought this was pretty interesting. So definitely do go check it out. The links will be in the description down below, and I hope you guys do find it interesting also. But with that said, of course, I know I haven't updated you all on ADA Cardano in quite a while, but as we are starting to see the tide shift here, I do plan on putting out more updates about it. So make sure you do stay tuned and make sure you do stay up to date on everything that happens here. And don't forget that I do add even more ADA Cardano technical analysis in the free newsletter that is down below. So make sure you do go check that out and subscribe completely for free. But with that said, I will of course see you all tomorrow in the next video. Y'all have an amazing day. Peace.